Hey, welcome back to my channel. Appreciate you stopping by. This is a continuation, part 3 of this 7-inch rescue build. Alright, my favorite part, the flight controller. Now, Matek has a manual on their website that shows you where everything goes and how to pin everything up. We're using a 4-in-1 ESC instead of 4 different ESCs. Now you might say, well, what are you doing that for? You know, this has a built-in PDB, a power distribution board. Well, the manual or the manufacturer specification shows 35 amp. Shows 35 amp through here. So their PDB's rated for 35 amp. Well, I may end up changing motors out. I may end up doing other things. And I feel like I'm going to exceed that limit. So with this, I have 55 amp to work with. So I don't have to worry about heating up or burning out my power distribution board on here. So I'm just using the flight controller portion and not worrying about current flow going through this PDB. So just to give you an idea of the wiring, we have 2 grounds. So one is for the flight controller. So one of them will go to the flight controller, and the other one is for the onboard BEC. So this ESC has a 5-volt BEC on it, so you can get, you know, ground and 5 volts to whatever. I'm probably going to end up de-pinning that because I'm not going to use it. I'll keep the wires in case I do sometime. But we're going to use one of these grounds. And we're going to ground to this grounding pad here. So basically the ground will go here. The next wire in the bundle is our battery voltage. So this is actually going to equal what your battery has. But we're not really sending a ton of current through this, so we should be fine. So we're going to put that right there on the battery voltage pad. Then the next red wire is our 5-volt BEC, which I said I'm going to de-pin that. I'm not going to use it. You can hook your camera or VTX or something up to it. And then the next 4, so we have these 4 white wires, and that's going to be motor 4, motor 3, motor 2, and motor 1. Okay? And they will end up, I mean, obviously you want to turn it like this, so when you solder it, you'll be able to flip it back. But you have motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, motor 4. Okay? And then our next wire is our current. So this ESC has a current sensor on it, and that information is coming out here. And it will go here. And then finally we have ESC telemetry wire. And this ESC telemetry wire is going to go to this pad right here. It's the RX6. So we'll solder that into that. So we'll supply battery voltage here, ground, ESC telemetry, current, and then our motor wires. Here, 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 and here. And that's the wiring that we need to do to connect our ESC to our flight controller. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start that process. Now I'm going to take motor 4 wire, so this is the signal wire for motor 4, and I'm not going to pull it taut, I'm going to give it a little bit of slack, and then I'm going to rest that on there. Tells me where I'm going to cut. I'm just going to snip off what I am not going to use. Now, to make this bundle nice and cozy, I'm going to cut all of them to that length. Okay. I'm going to pull this out. And these 4 wires, I'm going to go ahead and tin those up. I have my wires tinned up. Now I'm going to tin my pads. Now what I like to do is, I don't know if you can see the tip of that solder has a little bit of flux on it. See if I can figure out an easier way to show this to you. I have my flux. I'm going to put just a teeny bit on each one of these pads. Just a tiny little bit. And that'll help flow that solder onto that pad. And you'll have less issues with lifting your pad. Again, get those tinned up. I have my soldering iron set to 200 degrees. Put a little solder on your soldering iron here. Okay. Nice little shiny mounds. Now we'll plug our wire back in here. Okay. So we have motor number 4. Trim that and make sure that little piece ends up where it should, in the trash. Position that with like a little bit of an angle. Okay. Yeah, exposed wires are not your friend, so the least amount of exposed wire you have, the better. Alright, so we have motor number 3. Okay. So now all the motor wires are on. So we're just going to turn that around a couple times. Now that should sit there just like that. I don't know if you noticed, but I had my orientation spun around when I set it back down. So glad I caught that before I continued on. So now we're ready to tin up some pads here. So I'm going to get a little bit of flux. I'm just going to put a little bit of flux on these pads. So we're going to use our negative pad. Our positive pad. RX6, which is our telemetry. And we're going to use this current pad. Just a little bit. Alright. Don't need a ton of heat. I'm just going to go to about 375. Alright, I'm just going to, away from the board, I'm going to put a little solder on in case it wants to jump around on me. Okay. So our negative pad, that's the hardest one to flow because the negative pad is connected to so much it sucks the heat away from your soldering iron. Positive pad, just want to flow that just a little bit better. I got a couple yuckies in there. Okay. Alright, now we're going to do our RX pad. I'm going to turn the temperature down to 250. Clean that off. Okay, and then we're going to do the current pad. Now we can go ahead and do our ground. Maybe. Telemetry pad's pretty small, so I'm just going to trim this little bit of excess off there. Got it in my fingers. Make sure always make sure that ends up in the trash and not somewhere on your build. Just going to turn that around. Okay. Okay. So now we have battery voltage, ground, our our current sensor and telemetry. So the ESC is completely wired up to the flight controller now. So if we want to go ahead and depin this, our ESC is all hooked up to the flight controller. So the only thing I want to check now is continuity. Always check continuity after you get done soldering before you plug it in. If you plug this in, now we're going to have just quick continuity between these two until that capacitor is charged. Okay, so we're good on that. You can always do your continuity just through your XT60. You can just plug in it. The next step for me is the receiver. So that way I'm not really worried about GPS or the camera or VTX or any of that stuff right now. The receiver's next, because after I put the receiver on, then I go into Betaflight, or in this case iNav, and make sure everything is working the way it should. There's no sense in hooking up your VTX and your camera and your GPS and whatever else you're going to hook up. So we'll get the receiver hooked up. We'll put some screws on here to make sure nothing moves around, and then we'll go ahead and plug in and make sure that things are responding. We'll plug the battery in, make sure the motors are turning, and all that jazz. So now I'm not going to do like a full breakdown and putting these guys together for a redundant system here in this video. I've actually made a separate video for that. So if you're going to use the R-XSR with the XM Plus and a redundant system for your build, watch that other video that I have, and then you can come back to the build and continue on. But I just feel like this took a little more detail than what I want to put in this build video. So basically right here I'm just tinning. Before I tin this, I just want to put a little bit of flux on there. Makes for a lot cleaner, stronger bond. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and put those in permanently. Running my soldering iron at 200 degrees. Okay, our receiver package is now soldered to the board. So again, we have ground, 5-volt, our S-bus, and our smart port telemetry. Now that we have our receiver bundle placed in, I went ahead and just put my antennas in. I mean, this is kind of a preference thing, so you can do it like I did it or however you want to do it. But basically, I have my R-XSR with the aftermarket antennas. I have one out here, and then I have one right here. So it makes a nice L shape. And then underneath here, we have the XM Plus. I have one antenna here, upright, and then one horizontal here. Kind of get an idea of what I did. So that should be pretty good. Now that we have our receiver bundle done, and I checked everything's working there, we're going to go ahead and install our FPV camera and our VTX. Alright, so the VTX and camera and other parts and pieces will be on part 4. So we will continue on with that. I appreciate you watching and look forward to getting part 4 out as soon as possible. Thank you and have a good day.